We live in a world of binaries, black and white, day and night, yes or no, positive or negative, male or female, masculine and feminine. But what about the people who do not fit into black and white? What about the grey people? What about those people who are not masculine or feminine, who are either in the middle or indefinable? Is androgyny a sufficient concept to explain who or what they are?
I think what we often mean commonsensically by androgyny is gender ambiguity. In other words, we can't tell the difference, or we know that it's a man or a woman, but we think they display characteristics that are appropriate to the other gender position.
Androgynous, like as an adjective, can be used in many different ways, and I think it can be physiological, whether it's someone who's intersexed, actually has both male and female genitalia, or they just can't be defined as either or. And then it can be physical, where your actual physical body kind of doesn't fit into a feminine sort of perceived body. And then it can be behavioral, emotional, psychological. I think there are different aspects. I don't think someone is androgynous completely.
I think I would regard myself as androgynous, especially if you take your definition into kind of defining a political, almost psychological mindset where you actively choose not to see gender boundaries or blur gender definitions.
If androgyny is the refusal of essentialized gender categories like masculine or feminine, then who gets to decide exactly what androgyny is? I mean, is it really a definable category that people can fit into, can slot into, or is it about not slotting in?
I've always felt that I have a problem with people's need to box people. I think that's especially prominent in my sexuality, because I actually refuse to be defined in either category, or any category at all. So I think that sort of creeps into other aspects of my life, and therefore I do incorporate both masculine and like feminine aspects or characteristics into my appearance and the way I behave. But then I do think that it's also an expression of myself, because I think I've always had this sort of duality, not quite sure where I fit in.
It was quite a natural choice to make, in the fact that I grew up in a very egalitarian household where there weren't any gender constructions, and I wasn't brought up saying your brother's only allowed to do this while you're only allowed to do that. So I grew up in a way that I didn't feel there should be classifications. The labels were just for jam jars.
I think it's important to distinguish androgyny from sexuality and from gender specifically. That we have a sex-gender system that androgyny, I think, is a deeply political statement against. So even though it isn't about people's intentions, that maybe their discomfort with what they see as the options in terms of the sex-gender system.
Are we born essentially masculine, or are we born essentially feminine, or essentially somewhere on the spectrum? Or is gender something that is fluid, and when we're in a different environment or a different social sphere, do we move up and down that spectrum? So does a different situation bring out different aspects of ourselves?
You come to a university where people are generally more open-minded. You get given the intellectual space to try and explore new things, and you come here and no one knows who you were before, so it gives you more of a freedom to explore, and also provides you with the resources to back up your identity or the choices that you make.
You just come into contact with people that weren't in your world before. People of different, like divergent sexualities, people that just think differently, I suppose. And you can't help but be affected by it and start to question your own values and the way you've sort of perceived the world.
But then why, in some environments, do we feel like we're acting more natural? And why in other environments or around other people do we feel like we're inhibiting who we really are?
The way in which people signal their sense of self in terms of femininity or masculinity is always contingent. It depends on what's going on around them, what are the choices available to them, and to what extent are they free to make those choices actively, and to what extent are they constrained into making choices because those are the only choices available.
There's a huge trend at the moment to be different, to break the constraints of society, and I suppose go against the grain and not be defined.
We think we're a lot more free by not subscribing to a specific or centralized gender category, but by labeling ourselves androgynous or placing ourselves within the category of androgyny, we just present a whole new set of boundaries, a whole new set of rules, a whole new set of things to conform to. So I think androgyny as a concept fails because it just creates another gender category instead of deconstructing and tearing apart gender constructions.